Understanding of exposures in Black women's hair salons, Brandeis students in collaboration with EPA Region 1, the Resilient Sisterhood Project, Black Women for Wellness, MAOTA, with other partners including BPHC, Silent Spring Institute, Clean Water Action, Healthy Hospitality Committee, and ACE, they conducted a study to assess hair salon workers' exposure to specific volatile organic compounds and fine particulate matter. Students will present their findings and recommendations. Please give them a warm welcome.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming to see our presentation. We are the Brandeis Environmental Justice Community Field Program. This past semester, we've been focusing on environmental health, and so this our capstone project was actually this research study assessing occupational exposure in Black hair salons. So, as the title suggests, this semester we studied exposure to different products in Black hair salons for both patrons and clients. So our key partners at the EPA, the Resilient Sisterhood Project, the Massachusetts Office of Technical Assistance, the Silent Spring Institute, and Black Women for Wellness really helped to frame our study. They suggested that we do chemical exposure in Black hair salons. Salons are small indoor environments that have a lot of chemicals, so it's a potential dangerous environment for environmental health. To give a brief background, hair has been an integral part of Black culture throughout history. In the United States, since times of slavery, Black women have been pressured to have their hair straightened, to adhere to white standards of beauty. So this leads to a hair care industry that's largely focused around hair straightening. Black hair salons are particularly interesting because they really haven't been studied, and there's been alarm about hair products in the past from organizations like the Environmental Working Group. So this lack of research is a social injustice. Because Black hair is different from other types of hair, the products and procedures used on them are different. And they're less commonly used, so they get less examination and attention from environmental groups. This lack of information is environmental injustice. Black women, unfortunately, do not get the same access to information about the products they are using, and therefore are potentially endangered from hazardous chemicals. So more recently, from the 1960s till now, there has been a big trend. There have been trends popping up for natural hair. But however, we found that in our research, hair straightening is still the most common procedure in hair salons. Depending on an individual's hair and natural style and personal styling choice, these straightening procedures can be anywhere from a mix of chemicals like relaxers and texturizers to styling with heat using flat irons and hot combs, hooded dryers, and blow dryers. And although there's been an increase of natural hair, especially within the past 5 years, natural hairstyling, the focus of our study has really been on the chemical procedures, how workers and clients are exposed, and the adverse health effects they might experience. So we looked at the common procedures occurring in hair salons, and we also looked at the common products used in these procedures. From the ingredients on the labels, we found many chemicals had harmful effects in both dermal and respiratory pathways of exposure, and we received our information from the National Library of Medicine's Hazardous Substance Database, or the HSDB. It's important to note that many of the chemicals listed on the labels are not in the hazardous substance database at all. So we do know that these types of products cause eye irritation, upper respiratory problems, hair loss, and can even be carcinogenic. But there hasn't really been conclusive studies, so this is some questions we wanted answered. So here are some of the chemicals that we knew that were going to be in salons based on ingredient labels. But however, some products have misleading labels saying they don't have certain chemicals and they do have them. An example is this Brazilian blowouts. And recently there's been studies from the Environmental Working Group saying that things that say they don't have formaldehyde actually do have formaldehyde in them. But our type of sampling was limited to air sampling, and so we can detect ketones, aldehydes, and VOCs.
So as my colleague Talia just mentioned, months before the study even actually began, we submitted our study design to the IRB at Brandeis University, which is simply just a committee that approves and reviews research regarding human subjects. Its purpose is just to make sure that all the research involving human subjects follows federal institutional ethical guidelines. The main questions we wanted investigated were what are the daily workplace sources and concentrations of these chemicals that I'll explain in the next slide, and also what are the health concerns associated with the services provided. So these are the list of chemicals we tested for. Volatile organic compounds are chemicals that have a tendency to be gaseous and in high concentrations at room temperature due to their high vapor pressure and low boiling point. Aldehydes are another class of chemical compounds that contain a formal group attached to a substituent group, for all you chemists out there. And particulate matter is also a new, not exactly chemical, but a substance that's been talked about recently because its tendency to, once inhaled, lodge deep into the respiratory tract and cause a lot of problems. But it's just the combination of solid and liquid phase particles in the air that are 2.5 microns in diameter. We also tested for carbon dioxide, which, although is referenced in relation to climate, it's also a great assessment of ventilation in indoor areas, because a high concentration of carbon dioxide usually corresponds to poor ventilation, because it indicates that fresh air isn't being introduced. Also, once it's inhaled and metabolized in the bloodstream, it produces carbon monoxide, which in indoor areas is a poisonous gas, but can also bind to hemoglobin and block the uptake of oxygen into the bloodstream. We also measured temperature and relative humidity, just as background measurements, and because they're a good assessment of indoor ventilation as well. A high temperature and relative humidity can also correspond to high concentrations of the other substances I just mentioned. So once we figured out what we wanted to test for and got approval by the IRB, we moved into the recruitment phase of our testing. And we started by doing an online search for black hair salons in the areas of Dorchester, Mattapan, and Roxbury. And we came up with about 90 hair salons. So we split up into teams of about 3 or 4. There's 12 of us. We split up into teams of about 3 or 4 of us and walked from door to door and interacted with the salon owners to kind of tell them what our study is about, the implications, its purpose, and why particularly black hair salons. And we asked them if they're interested in participating. In the end, 10 salons agreed to participate. And it's not that our success rate was 1 in 9. It's mostly because a lot of the times the salon owners weren't there. A lot of times, and also we didn't have the time or equipment to fully recruit or talk to these 90 salons. So I'm sure we could have participated in more salons if we had the necessary resources. So as Talia also mentioned, we did strictly air sampling. And so from left to right, we used the Suma canister, which is a 6-liter metal can with a vacuum inside of it that once we attach an 8-hour flow controller, which is a nozzle that allows us to sample air for a continuous 8 hours. And this is useful in measuring volatile organic compounds indoors, and we can use that to measure throughout the entire workday. We also use the Q-Track to measure carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, relative humidity, as well as temperature. We use the Dust Track to measure particulate matter 2.5, and we use carbonyls attached to a pump to also sample air throughout the entire workday to measure aldehydes. And so the Suma canisters and carbonyls were set up in the beginning of the day, and we sampled them throughout the entire workday. And And then we came back in the afternoon, took these dust track and Q track measurements, and gathered the sumicanist and carbonyl, and that was the end of testing.
So first, we looked at our qualitative data. We gave a 33 questionnaire to salon owners, which looked at things like protective equipment, ventilation use, health history, and personal protective equipment used in the salon. And one of the most notable findings from that was that there was no standard ventilation system in the salons, and ventilation is very important given the services and chemicals used in the salon. So here's an example of the questionnaire that we had. And what was interesting about the questionnaire was that salon workers rated their health on average at a 3.6 out of 4, but then 9 out of 10 of the salon workers were also concerned about the health effects of the products that they use in the salons. At the same time, also 5 out of 10 of the salon workers do not usually refer to the material safety data sheet that accompanies products that they use in the salon, so it's a little concerning. And as you can see here were the self-reported health symptoms from the salon workers. And we found that cuts, fatigue, and back pain were very common, but there were also incidents of skin irritation, eye irritation, and chemical burn in the salons. So first we assessed carbon dioxide, and as you can see here, 8 of the 10 salons were above the limit set by the ASHRAE, which is the American Society for Heating, Refrigeration, Air Conditioning Engineers, and they set the guidance limit for carbon dioxide. And as Omkar mentioned, carbon dioxide is an indicator of ventilation. So as you can see here, a lot of the salons were not well ventilated, but this is also just a snapshot of the CO2 levels for the day. We just took a 5-minute long reading. Potentially they could be higher during certain procedures or peak hours. So one of our most significant findings was that there were very high levels of particulate matter in the salons. So the EPA has an outdoor limit, the National Ambient Air Quality Standard, and it's at 35 micrograms per cubic meter. So levels in the salon exceeded what's currently in Beijing, and it's also labeled by the EPA as hazardous. Now this was very surprising to us, so we wanted to follow up and do follow-up testing. So we went back to one salon for 4 hours, and on every minute we recorded particulate matter, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, relative humidity, and temperature. We also recorded observations, and as you can see here, that particulate matter tended to correlate with hair dryer and flat iron use. That it started very low. It started at just 6 micrograms per cubic meter in the beginning of in the morning, and it spiked with the use of flat irons and hair dryers, and then it would stay high throughout the day, which is also an indication of poor ventilation. So we also, as we said, we also measured VOCs and aldehydes, and here were a few significant findings from that. We found high levels of benzene in the salon that were above the EPA carcinogenic target risk, and we also found levels of chloroform in 5 of the salons that were also above the EPA limit, and these are both probable carcinogens. So benzene can have harmful effects on reproductive organs. So we definitely would like to follow up with more testing for this.
So the data we received was both qualitative and quantitative. The qualitative data was in the form of a self-reported survey. From that, we gauged that the primary health effects were eye, skin, and respiratory irritation. In terms of our particulate matter, or PM 2.5, we found that 8 out of 10 of the salons exceeded the National Ambient Air Quality Standard by quite a large level. This was our most unexpected and concerning finding. We don't know what these levels mean for the health of the workers. Also, a majority of the salons had carbon dioxide levels exceeding the ASHRAE ventilation standard of 800 parts per million. We found VOC concentrations exceeding the EPA's standards in some salons, and we found some VOCs in all of the salons. Benzene, chloroform, and tetrachloroethylene were all above the EPA's carcinogenic target risk. All 3 of these VOCs are known to be possible carcinogens, and knowing that the levels are so high is pretty scary. We faced several limitations while conducting the study and analyzing the data. The carbonyl pumps often malfunctioned, which led to problems while collecting the aldehyde data. While analyzing the data, we found that it was difficult to make any suggestions for the daily, weekly, or monthly, or yearly health health of the salon workers, because we collected the particulate matter and carbon dioxide readings in snapshots. This is why the 4-hour test, the follow-up test that Allison mentioned, was so important. We also had a very short time frame in which to complete the study. We hope that future researchers look into particulate matter further in salons. We hope to see continued research into assessing ventilation, the existing ventilation systems. And finally, we would also like to expand the health study to have something like a number like 100 salons within the study. Some outstanding questions now that we've completed this study. First, how do these chemicals affect workers' health in the short and long term? How can we reduce exposure for the salon workers and their clients? Is there a correlation between flat irons, hair dryers, and particulate matter in salons? And what are the implications of the particulate matter spikes in salons? And then also, is there, it's not there, never mind. We had a question also. We were trying to look into collecting urine samples from the salons to try to study the phthalates and endocrine disruptors that might be present in the salons. We didn't have any, none of the participating salon owners wanted to contribute to that, so that's something we hope to look forward to finding in the future. And then finally, we'd like to thank our professor, Laura Golden, who's here with us, and our program assistant, Susanna Kroll. Also, we'd like to thank Lily Marcelin from the Resilient Sisterhood Project, who was kind enough to invite us here, as well as Deborah Brown from the EPA and Joe Allen, our lead investigator. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Do we have time for a couple of questions?
Thank you so much. That's fascinating. I'm just wondering if you did kind of have a procedure for reporting back your findings to the salon owners, and if you did, how they reacted, or if your intention even was to offer suggestions, or whether that wasn't kind of part of your study?
So our intention was to report back to the salon owners. We haven't done that yet because there's a really strict guideline from the IRB that we need to go through. We don't just want to tell them, you have crazy high levels of particulate matter in their salon, and then not tell them what that means and how they can take care of it, or how they can respond to knowing that. So we have to be careful when we do that.
That was awesome, I have to tell you. Congratulations, and congratulations to your advisor. In your questionnaire of the salon owners, did you ask them about health outcomes particularly associated with particulate matter, asthma, wheeze, difficulty breathing, cough, those kinds of things that might be correlated in some way to particulate matter exposure?
We did, but we had that in there, but at the time we didn't know that the particulate matter was so high, so I think we would have emphasized that more if we did know. But we did ask them about it, but that wasn't one of the key health effects they highlighted in the questionnaire.
Any other questions?
This is really great work you guys have done. Looking at your data, it occurs to me that possibly this is a case where you might not find that much difference between these salons and ones in more upscale neighborhoods with richer clients, because it seems correlated to what you're having done to your hair. And in the whatever more expensive areas, and not everybody, but people come in and they have this thing done and that thing done and that thing done and that thing done. And in my personal experience, I haven't heard exhaust fans being run. Okay, when I go to the salon, I do not hear exhaust fans being run. So I'm more, maybe they are, maybe something's happening, but all that particulate matter you're talking about may actually occur at a higher rate, which is just a weird thing, and sort of where less is more type thing, and it's a food for thought in my head. It also makes me think that whenever I do blow dry my hair, which is not often, I better run the exhaust fan in my bathroom. I don't know why it's creating that, but it's obviously doing something bad.
Hi, I was just wondering if y'all could explain some of the procedures that actually take place at these salons.
Okay. So, according to our questionnaire, at least, most of the procedures at salon were straightening procedures, as I said. They did have natural hairstyling, but it was the most straightening procedures are the most common. So, and when I say straightening procedures, I mean both chemical and non-chemical procedures, like putting in a relaxer, which is chemical composition to change the chemical composition of the hair to make it straight, or a texturizer, which they can do a lot of things, but mostly it loosens the curls of your hair to make it less kinky. And then usually after there's a relaxer, there's also you have to like dry your hair because it goes on wet and you wash it out. So there's a blow dryer, and then there's a flat iron to make it more straight. And then, but if you don't have that process, usually what a salon owner actually told me is usually when they don't have hair that's been processed chemically, they use a hot comb, which is a comb made out of metal you put in a stove for like 10 minutes and take it out, and then you rake it through the hair after you've washed and blow dried it. So you rake it through the hair and it becomes straight because of the heat. And there's also things like curling irons, and there are also different products used like hairspray, hair gel, things like that.
This is going to be your last question.
Usually in any hair salon, they have to sterilize the equipment being used, and when we looked at what they were soaking in, and if the heat applied from a blow dryer with volatiles from some of these chloroforms or products that are used for sterilizing equipment.
We didn't look at most of the sterilizing products, but it's interesting you said something about hair dryers and flat irons. Actually, in a lot of salons, we smelled burning hair. And those salons also just happen to be the same salons with high levels of particulate matter. So it would be interesting to look more into that as well, because it could be what's on the flat iron that's volatilizing, or it could be the hair itself. There's a lot of things we still have to look at.
So we look at this research as a partnership with the salons, so we also have to be careful about how we go in and what we say to them, because we don't want to scare them off, because this is a business for them. Many of those hair salons, the beauticians who work there, really depend on the business. So the goal is for us to be informed and to inform them, but to work in partnership and to really bring information and to also bring alternatives, as not to really scare anyone. So I think this is a great research, great pilot project, but the goal is to really go back and really speak to the hair salon and to continue to work with them, but to present the information, the results to them in a way that's not scary, so we can continue to bring on more hair salons, but also to bring alternatives. Because it's one thing, having heard everything that we've been talking about, it's like the emissary of bad news in a way, and that's not very productive to be that way. But the goal is to just say, yes, we talk about how terrible these exposures are, but also what are the alternatives, and how do we ensure that we can work with those hair salons for them to retain their customers, but also in a place that is safe for them and safe for their customers.
So I just wanted to add really quickly that a team of 5 or 6 of the students in the class now will be continuing on with this work next semester. So we'll be finishing writing the paper, hopefully to publish, and then we'll be continuing to present at more places that invite us. And we're going to attempt to get some urine samples next semester, because we think that could really help us understand what's happening, as well as doing some further backup or some further research into whether it's the straighteners or the chemicals or the whether it's the chemicals that you put in your hair or the tools that you use to straighten the hair. So we'll be continuing next semester.
I guess most important, I wanted to share that they'll be going back, hopefully getting approval from the IRB and going back to the salons and telling them about what they should know about what they found.
Thank you so much. Let's show our appreciation for this wonderful presentation.